Okay, folks, I'm here with my good friend, John Collis. We've known each other, I think, forever, since we swam together in Indiana. And John, you were one of the major stabilizing forces on our team. Always, as I remember, you were always calm, always had a smile on, always keeping it together. And it was really helpful, I think, to everybody. You were just such a great force on the team. Nothing seemed to shake you ever, and you just handled it all in stride. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, well, this is an honor to be reconnected, John. This is just so much fun. Thanks for having
me. Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to start off just by learning a little bit about, kind of your background within swimming and kind of bring this up and seeing what you're doing today and all the impact that you're having on the swimmers and the community around you and the greater community of swimming as a whole. So tell us a little bit about some of the highlights of your swimming career, because I know swimming next to you, you were a phenomenal swimmer. So tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and swam with a big team here in Cleveland, the Lake Erie Silver Dolphins. Jerry Holtree was the coach, I think, about a half a century. I mean, he was such a stabilizing force, a consistent guy.
Wasn't he the coach for Hawken as well?
That's correct.
Amazing coach. Wow.
Yeah, he heck of a distance coach too, and he really he was kind of like a fine wine, as he got older, he got better in terms of on a national level, especially with the women distance swimmers. He did some amazing things. And my senior year in high school, it was a combination of being, a summer birthday. I was young for my grade, and I got hit with mono my senior year, and I missed a lot of school. So I graduated from Hawken, and I'd like to find out when you decided you were going to go to Indiana, but I decided when I was about 9 years old, watching this guy, Mark Spitz.
Mark Spitz. I think that was the same time we decided we want to go to Indiana.
So many kids, I'm sure. And I remember telling my parents, that's where I want to go. I just hadn't looked anywhere else. But I was at the point where I was a real small fish in a big pond. And I didn't really have a very good senior year. And so I had an opportunity to spend a gap year, post-grad year. And to this day, I'm not sure exactly how I found Mercersburg Academy, but it was either possibly our college counselor or one of our swim coaches. But I got to spend a year at Mercersburg, and it was transforming. It was, you hear about, those stories, but it was a transforming 9 months. I went from conditioned, kind of an overachiever, worked, honestly, I feel a little too hard, where I met a coach now who was all about the mind.
And who was that coach there?
John Tremblay.
Amazing coach, right?
And it was great in terms of the coaches that I've been involved with. I've just been so lucky to, as a child, grow up and learn this sort of physical work ethic, and then head off to Mercersburg, where it was the power of the mind was just so incredible, where I really started learning about the residual effects of training and that I need to back off at times. And even at Mercersburg, I got the chicken pox, and I was quarantined, and I went through that same sort of cycle where I was like, oh gosh, I missed 3 weeks of swimming, 4 weeks of swimming. Let's get ready for next year. And I remember John Tremblay, saying, listen, you have worked your rear end off your whole, childhood. You're going to swim out of your mind. Let's just go to Easterns. You are going to shock yourself. And, I'm like, whatever, I got nothing else to lose. And I went all my lifetime best. I swam incredibly for myself, incredibly well. And then we had an incredibly unique opportunity. We were, the prep school national champions that year. And the alum at Mercersburg pulled together funds where we were able to go to Mission Viejo for a dual meet. And so it was it was marketed as the public school national champions against the prep school national champions. And, we just had the kids on our team were, one Rich Sager, Olympic gold medalist.
He's phenomenal. Did you? Yeah, and then didn't you have Billy Matthews too? Probably at that point, or
yeah, Billy was a little later, a little later,
younger, right?
A little later, yep. But a great story was Mercersburg's real weak link was the 500 free, and that was what I swam. And so that was the one event that I think everybody was expecting, we'd lose. And who do I swim against is Roger Madruga, a future teammate at Indiana.
Right.
So it had again, sort of almost like one of those very few out of body swims where you literally are almost feeling like you're watching yourself. And again, I was probably for a few months, all I was doing was maybe 1,500 yards a day. And I think I was just riding those years of the Jerry Holtree grind. And so I learned a tremendous, amount there. And then having the opportunity to be with guys like you and to swim with what I remember Bobby Knight saying, that we had the opportunity of swimming for the greatest coach of all time. And phenomenal. And then he specifically said, I want to say not swim coach, the greatest coach of all time. And I just remember, wow, that was great. So
you earned your way. And if you look at this, John, could anybody really have gotten a better set of coaches and a better experience than you did of going from Jerry Holtree, which is right, if that's a starting coach, holy cow, right? He's phenomenal, over to John Tremblay, who's absolutely amazing, and up to Doc Counsilman. Who puts together three coaches like that, John? I can't imagine the amount of, just as it pulls into you, all that incredible knowledge, energy, excitement, because all these guys are phenomenal.
Really, wow. Yeah, I'd like to say it was lucky, but I think, my parents sort of guided me, through those directions, and when you look back, just even getting into the sport of swimming, it was kind of funny. My father was a physician, and so he was always worried about injuries. And, I'd come home, say, hey, I want to play football. And instead of saying no, he'd look at the flyer and he'd say, oh, it's at 4:00, Helen, his wife, my mom, can you get him to football practice? And she's like, no, I'm not going to be able to do it. And, next day I come home with a swim flyer and, you got to be there at 5 a.m. and all these crazy, for some reason, no problem getting me there. So they didn't tell me not to do it, but they definitely steered me away from those contact sports. And I think it was pretty well planned that I had that opportunity to see how good I could really get. And I think in that sense, I really carry that over with my kids. They all have different objective goals or measurable goals, but I think ultimately you want to be our age and look back and say at the time you did everything you could and really just enjoyed the journey. And that's kind of how I reflect.
So as you were going along, who were some of the sources of inspiration in the swimming world for you?
Sure. Well, absolutely. In terms of the coaches, I think what we just spoke about, those three really.
Yeah, you kind of had them.
Yeah. And then in terms of teammates, Rich Sager was one who was just a fascinating guy, though his focus and his drive. Rip Esselstyn has been a lifelong friend of mine who ended up heading off to Texas, did great things at University of Texas. And in terms of people that I really looked up to as a kid, Brian Goodell was one. I just remember hearing the story, this was before the internet and before where it was really hard to get information. And you'd hear these secondhand stories of the sets he would do and remember, hearing about the Russian Olympic team coming in and training with, he was incredible. I remember watching him. I think he was only like 16, 17 years old when he set those world records. He was a big inspiration to me.
And so just real quick, Rich Sager, I'll never forget the first time I experienced, I was in the pool area in Indianapolis Natatorium. And I experienced for the first time, watching him swim is such a dramatic thing, because at the end of the race, and I'm guessing you had to swim against this before, his kick would turn on and it would sound like a bomb went off in the building. I remember when we were sitting there and he was swimming the 400 long course meters, and he did his last lap, and literally 6,000 heads in the stands, because there was about exactly 6,000 people. It was all filled. All of them turned like this to watch this kick turn on. You didn't have to say anything. It just went off. And he had amazing legs, as I remember. Is that right?
I never, I mean, as a distance swimmer, mine sort of just puddled back there, with the 2 beat, and every once in a while got crazy with a 4 beat crossover. But
remember John Moffitt? And
the big brush,
giant legs. And I'll never forget the first time I saw him, I'm like looking down, and I see these legs come by me attached to a person, of course, but he's walking around his legs. He couldn't swing through. The legs were so big he couldn't swing through.
Oh my God.
Amazing, these guys.
Yeah. So those guys were those that really motivated me, and they were great to practice with. Rich kind of had that mentality. He never lost anything. I mean, he'd even try to kind of slip in, first 300 meters of a 300 warm up, and he would never let anybody beat him, and it was
so just kind of a general question here, because I think people can get the feeling already is your love for the sport, but what does swimming mean to you?
Yeah, that's a huge question. I think, maybe I take this as a coach a little differently than others. But I definitely feel swimming, I guess we need to start backwards. Let's start at the end and answer that and work, forward. I don't want to sound too all encompassing, but really just happiness. It's like, you got to find what makes you happy. And once you find, that, if you start working backwards, then it's a purpose. And if you have got that purpose, you need to find that balance of a commitment and your abilities and your goals. And that works into finding the teammates in your team, and that whole process of just that journey. And how swimming, I'm sure, like other sports, I know I talk to football players and things, and how these sports connect you with, how you're going to behave academically, how you're going to behave professionally, how you're going to behave morally, spiritually, all those things kind of come together. And when I think of swimming, I think all those things have to come together. And when I think of swimming, I keep falling back on, being a coach. And the greatest part of swimming probably are things like this, 40 years later, the stories we're talking about, years later, these boys and girls are now men coming back and telling you stories and what something in a practice that you may have forgotten, probably I did forget, but they'll say that you told them, and how it connected everything. It's just, that's what it's all about. I know our goal is to get these kids fast and get them to junior nationals and nationals and trials, but ultimately that's what I want those kids to have, just a great thought and how it connected their lives.
It's the adventure that we all go on together. It's like climbing a mountain isn't about climbing a mountain, right? And this is a big mountain we're climbing our whole lives, right? And learning, and students of sport. And I feel like the people that I talk to that are in the swimming world is, I mean, and that's all we hire in our company is people that have lived that life.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do in this company, you have to live that life. Otherwise, it's just we relate better. It's easy to understand where it comes from. We know that, you know, what hard work is like, things like, you got that. And so I always feel like we're just all brothers and sisters. It doesn't matter what age. We're all like family members of some sort. And I mean, just connecting with you again like this, I mean, I just feel the warmth. And here's one of the things that I always remember about you, John. Remember, I'm working along, which was not my favorite thing, going back and forth in practice. I loved racing, but part of the dues to get there was you had to practice. Whereas I know some people just love the water. I was more like, I can't wait to get to race. And I remember looking over and, you know, kind of this torture of going back and forth. And I look over and you just put this big smile on. I'm like, I always just felt a lot better because I knew as a distance freestyler, you were working harder than me and longer. Like if he can smile about this, I can at least tolerate it.
Oh gosh, that must have been a pretty good act on my end. But
you were always. I don't think I've ever remembered looking at your face that didn't pop on a smile at some point in the conversation, not too far in. It was just, and we could be talking about something real important and it would just like, you'd start smiling and just make the world better. The coaches that you've been with and how long you spent this, when did you start? You were 9 years old or so?
Yeah, that's about it. Yep.
And if you look at this, somewhere close to 50 years now, how many people thinking worldwide, all the way back in human history, have spent the time that you have learning their trade from absolute experts all the way through? I could tell you for me, at I think 14, I had to coach my own team. I was coaching and swimming because our coach was removed. And the only thing I could do, so there was no coaching at all. You had this opportunity and you made your success here along the way of going from top coach to the top coach in the world. You spent all this time. Now you're spending all this time giving back to that community and you love it. You're right. It's the thing that you love the most. How could anybody get? And then you've got another coach that's done very similar types of things with Charlie Lowndes there. Really, if you look at I mean, why wouldn't you want your kids in your program? If I was there, right, anywhere near you guys, I would want my kids with you because of the fact what you bring is not just intensity and making it a drudgery. You guys make it fun. I know Charlie does. I know you do. I know who you guys are personally. And you're just such fabulous people with such incredible knowledge. What can you do for those kids, right? If I put my child with you, what kind of source of information are they getting? And compare it to anybody in any field. Wow.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that, and it is great to hear. I have to admit, and as we talked about earlier, I don't think that was luck. It sounds like your career and your success was very similar to my father. My father was drafted to play baseball for the Cardinals, and
my dad was.
It was a fantastic story. He came home and he was like, "I got a contract, Dad," and my grandfather, who was the immigrant who worked 16 hours a day, ran this little restaurant, put like all these nephews and people through law school, all medical school. My grandfather said, "No, you're going to medical school." And my dad's like, "Dad, just 1 year. Let me see what it's all about." And to his dying day, he always wondered, would he have been cut in AAA or whatever? Would he have, and he loved that sport, but he was in that same exact situation. He coached himself. And I remember him always talking, God, if I just had a mentor, if I had somebody who would have, taught me how to take care of my shoulder and how many reps is correct. And I think, again, that's what, he provided me. He's like, I'm going to allow you to see how good you can get. And maybe he had even more foresight than that. I do remember him going on some recruit trips with me. Actually, he went on all my recruit trips. And he said, every coach that met you, first thing they asked, what were your times? And the first thing that Doc asked is, what do you want to do after college?
Oh,
And my dad just said, take him.
right.
Take him.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Wow, that's a great, such an astute look at it. Is right. What are your times? It's like they're buying a product versus who are you?
Right.
And what do you want? It's amazing. That's one of the things that our college, we have something called a college pipeline that it's up on our FM Fast Track. And the first thing it says is, start to learn about yourself. What do you want?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not just what can I get into, right, but start to understand what you want in life. What do you want to end up, the lifestyle you want to end up living, and then work your way back to what kind of school you want to go to.
I just last night I had a meeting, and I was so I was excited to see a sophomore, a young lady that really just started swimming. She's a sophomore in high school, asked to have a meeting with me with her parents, and I thought, all right, I'm gonna hear I'm beating her up too hard with yardage or something like that. And we sat down and they just wanted to know the process. She loves swimming. She's just loves it. And she wants to swim in college. And again, she just basically started swimming, so the typical thing is, what are your times, and this service that you have, I mean, when I input her, just get her family to say, all right, you are going to learn, you're going to find the school that fits you, the academically what they offer, the size, the climate, the culture. And, my goal is every one of my kids to swim in college, and again, it has nothing to do with, I shouldn't say nothing to do. I mean, if it's a top 5 D1 school, awesome. But oh my gosh, these Division III schools are there's so many phenomenal opportunities. And, our swimmers tend to be hard workers. They tend to have good grades. And it's fascinating to see how much money they're getting to go get an academic grant through a Division III school than an athletic grant through a Division I school,
Right,
and
right.
Your program is going to just objectively and just with the metrics be able to really make my job a lot easier, instead of saying, well, I know this coach or this school I hear is pretty good, and the whatever, it's going to be such an added service that I've never been able to provide my kids, and I've been fortunate that
I don't think any coach can do that. When we look at your, your reach, you've got tremendous contacts and things like that in the world of swimming, people that you've known for years, that you've been involved in swimming since 9, right? It's amazing. And heavily involved with being in the right places with the right people. And at the same time, like you said, it's hard to know each one of your swimmers coming up, what's going to be best for them, right? While you're trying to train your team. And what we saw as an opportunity to help is say, look, what if we did this for everybody? Just make it easy. And so we know here's a Division I rules, here's a Division II, here's a Division III, and it just lays it out so you don't have to look all over for it. I just thought, like, as a coach, when I was coaching years ago, I didn't have that as much as I had. We have Counsilman, we had everybody, but it's just you've pigeonholed to which is why we have Leslie Lucas on, and she's got college swimming recruiting. Or I'm sorry, what is it? Consulting, excuse me, college swimming consulting. And what she does is match you based on criteria that you give her with 30 different schools that you might not have even thought of. It's just and it's inexpensive. It's easy to do, and I would definitely do it with my child. It just makes sense. And
what's funny is just my 2 kids are going to get into it, because I've got a junior in high school who has just begun to, I think, really enjoy the sport. Kind of thinking, I want to be part of something in college, and she's a very, very hard worker academically. So it's going to be, that idea of being able to find the school that she wants to go to academically, but can she swim there?
Mhm.
And then I've got another daughter who has excelled athletically earlier. And her focus more is toward, where can I go for swimming? And, oh yeah, do they have, a good program for her academically? So they're coming from two different worlds, and they're even 11 months apart, and they're my kids. So
Amazing.
it'll be great to drop them into this and watch where it takes them.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your program, because you've got an amazing program going on over there, and we'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, as we talked, before, it's taken a lot of ups and downs, and I feel we're really in an up now. And it started, while I've been coaching, 30 years now. Cleveland Swim Institute has been since 2016. And I had an opportunity to rekindle a relationship with Glenn Mills. And Glenn and his wife moved to town, and we decided to take this outdoor pool. Is a pretty minimal pool. It's our big sales pitch is we build fast swimmers and slow pools. It's a basic outdoor pool that we built, this elaborate, we'll call it a tent. It's this galvanized aluminum structure with two hard walls, and a soft opaque roof. The first winter, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was like -5. We've got this forced air coming in. I'm like, this is not good. I can't believe we did this. I'm just like, oh my gosh. But we got through that first winter. And then, I felt like I almost started becoming sort of a, mechanical or electrical engineer. We started using infrared heat to keep the place heated, and that whole conduction and radiation. And so we've gotten through 6, 7 winters now. But to take a step back, Glenn's wife got a great job opportunity to work with Bowman at ASU. So all of a sudden, my role for the Cleveland Swim Institute was going to be land. I was going to be the guy who built our athletes and dropped them into the pool. I really wasn't going to spend much time on a day-to-day basis swim coaching. So all of a sudden, Glenn and Rachel are gone. The staff that came with them are gone. And, a lot of people, they have such a tremendous reputation that their clientele, the swimmers that came from very outside of the community. So they all left pretty much as well. And I remember, getting together with my wife going, what are we going to do? And, she was really the behind the scenes, the operation person. Nobody saw what she did in terms of the newsletters, the growing this thing organically. And then I reached out to a colleague who, again, the whole swimming relationship thing, Mark Krasinski, who has coached the Brecksville High School team for the last 10, 11 years. He's got 4 amazing swimmers that have gone through our program. He and his wife, I said, I need help, man. We don't have anybody. We just built this structure. Everybody's gone. We need some help. And they stepped in. My wife just put everything aside. And we just grew this thing internally. And we got all, the Brecksville community involved, and it just grew. And we got to our numbers just even within that year. We were at about, 150 kids. And it was such a joy because it were these kids that we knew, and some of the stories of watching these kids that were together playing t-ball, are now on the same team. And 2017, Brecksville High School set the public school national record in the 200 free relay. And that was with some kids one kid didn't even start swimming until he was a sophomore. So that's where I said, what is our niche, or what is our specialty, or what do we do maybe a little differently? And, you know, my professional field has been in exercise phys and strength and conditioning. And so we spend a tremendous amount of time on land. And I think we, as, I don't want to upset, you know, anybody specifically, but I think we as the United States are a little backwards, you know, that I know I got into swimming when I was 9 years old, and that's all I did. Mm-hmm. And thank God I was healthy. Thank God I didn't emotionally burn out. Mm-hmm. Thank God I was good enough that I was at least able to make my team, because if either of those didn't happen, I was literally a fish out of water. I didn't have a muscular structure. I probably didn't have the bone density because there's no non-bearing loads. And I've watched that happen in so many other sports that, you know, Johnny's got to be a great hockey player. So he's got to play hockey. He's got to do travel. He's got to quit everything. So, you know, I just realized that if we can make these kids athletes, we know they're going to be greater swimmers. The short-term benefit, we know they're going to be really good swimmers, but the long-term benefit of lifelong health. And again, maybe they come home one day and they say, I hate the smell of chlorine, or I don't want to ever wear a Speedo again. They are great athletes, and any skill coach, you give them a great athlete, and they're going to be a great tennis player or a great baseball player. And so we're taking a lot of pride in that. And I shouldn't say pride, we take a lot of focus.
A lot of work on that. Going back to two things. So generally, building athletes is one of your prime areas that you focus on, and you're seeing huge results. And folks, if you're watching this, I want to describe this really quick. There's something there. There's a book, I think it's called "It's Not About the Bike." Yeah. And I think what John is really clearly stating here, it's not about the pool. It's not about your bathing suit. It's not about the whatever kind of colored drink you're drinking, right? It's about what's inside you. Greatness comes from inside people, and it comes from nurturing that. And that's what John does with his teams, is he nurtures. And this is what he did even for Indiana swimmers that were the same age as him and even older than him, is he brought that to people, that ability. You look over, you're working hard, and he's smiling. What does that say to you? Right. And it's just that nurturing part of John that brings that to it. And having you and Charlie together with that type of environment, building such a positive environment. If it was about the pool, then Doc Counsilman wouldn't have been able to do it, if I'm right. And Bruce Laurie, Dr. Bruce Laurie, who is an amazing psychologist that works with our company, said that he came over from Scotland to take a trip. It was a fabulous interview with him. He's an amazing guy. And he said he came over and he was expecting this fabulous pool. And it wasn't. I mean, our pool was a 6-lane, 25-yard pool. At one point, it might have been a nice, pretty nice pool. It was, right? But when we were there, it was a pool. And he says it wasn't the pool. It was the magic that happened in it, right? Yeah. And I think if I were you, I'd even put a sign up there. It's not about the pool, because it's not about the pool. It's what are you going to get there? You could go to some place that has a great pool and still never come close to getting this type of experience. That the knowledge and the it's way more than just knowledge. You guys just synergize. You pull things together from everywhere, from strength, from energy systems, right? All that, technique, right? You were the top technical specialist ever in the world in anything, right? Mm-hmm. And then in the psychology, Doc Counsilman was an amazing psychologist, right? So was John Tremblay, right? So you have all this phenomenal information. You bring it together, and you bring it together with Charlie, who's that type of background too. I think it tells you where development occurs. It's really clear. And the experience you're going to have with these type of people changes the experience of your child. That's who you want them with. Doesn't matter where they're going. that's who you want them with. Which tools do you find that you think would be beneficial, that just looking at them like, wow, that might really help a team?
Yeah, I think, well, two things. As a coach, and just the personal benefit of the biomechanics of those animations, just where those, the joints and the vector forces. I've watched a bunch of different videos, of really trying to understand, drag forces, propulsive forces, things like that.
It's a little heavy sometimes.
Fascinating. Yeah. I mean, you've done such a really cool, so I'm super excited to get deep into that. I think the biggest thing is, I spent so much time, laying out a seasonal grid and, writing out, these progressions and periodizations in pencil,
Right.
because you always are going to have to shift gears based on illnesses and pools going down and things like that. But to have these resources of, again, here's the goal, how are we going to get to this goal, and dropping it into these formulas, the software that you've got to be able to break down, splits, stroke counts, heart rates, tempo rates. That just creates so much excitement and makes things so relative for the athletes, because again, somebody who doesn't experience swimming, and some people that do experience swimming, unfortunately, where my goal is to change that, is like, God, we're just looking at this darn black line, for 2 hours every day. And when you can take those type of tools and say, every stroke is with purpose now, it makes things really fun and really exciting. And so I think, there's no way I can do that. I'm not going to sit down and, try to carve out these splits and these tempos and all this stuff. And you've got this super simple operation for the kids to drop their information in, that I get that. I can see the improvements. I can see the regressions. Where do I have to shift gears? Where do I have to take that eraser out and shift gears to our program? Because it's, again, doing it for, half a century now, basically. I feel I'm still just learning.
One of the things that we just came out with, it's almost complete. It'll be out in a couple weeks, is the ability to design your season. It's called the in-water seasonal planner, and it actually has a printout now. And the printout turns into a PDF. So in 7 seconds or less, you can design an entire season for any group. So literally, if you had like 6 or 7 or 8 groups, in under 2 minutes, you'd have all of theirs charted out, and you can adapt them any moment. We really like it. And we have that. And then it also does the same thing to lay out a plan for strength training. Which I know you'll like.
Well, yeah. That is great. That is great. Because it's so easy to get locked down into, what has worked in the past. And it's, when there's an opportunity to just step back and look at what else is out there.
I think it's important to get the burden out of the coach's hands, but more important than the burden out of the coach's hands, the control into the swimmer's hands.
Yeah. And I just read, I think it was a swim coach that just read an article, or wrote an article on, we talk so much about what you just said, ownership. You own your career, you own your swimming. And what does that really mean? And that's part of it. What you just said is, taking the initiative, taking charge of what you want to achieve, utilize the coach as a resource. Don't expect the coach to initiate everything. Create that dialogue and build that camaraderie. It was a great article. It was a simple, but very, very helpful article. I need to look at where I saw that.
It's the swimmer's career, right? Mm-hmm. It's the coach is helping them along their career, but they need to own it, because if they don't own it, then nobody does.
Yeah.
So Wow, John, this has been so fantastic. I'm wondering just what kind of message do you have for our younger community members who are, in it to spend kind of maybe not even knowing it right now, but they may be in for a lifetime like we are, right? But at least somehow attached to it for a lifetime and having their kids later do it. What do you have as a kind of a message for them traveling along their pathway?
Yeah, again, you're talking about the young coach out
young
there.
Coaches, young swimmers, people that are, part of our community, even parents coming in, why do you think this is something that's a great thing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say first, as best as possible, try to get excited about the ups and downs. In the moment, it can be, why is this happening? But if you can go in, at these brief times in your life where you can just step back and say, all right, I'm going to get into something, and nothing is going to go exactly as planned. So try to really enjoy why things, wrenches thrown into things.
Like the trip, right?
Gosh, they tend to be the blessing, they tend to send you in the direction you really, really want to go. That would be, step one. Step two would be, really find even within, you might say you're a swim coach, but I think you really need to find your niche and to find what area that you really love, and then get excited about building a group around you. If that's a coaching staff, if that's your operational people, because that's going to bleed into the parents that you find, which, are the ones that are bringing in their athletes. Those would be sort of my key takeaways, I'd say. Find that niche and common people. And when I say, common, not so much in your niche. I can't remember which philosopher said you tend to despise those like yourself. I don't know if it's Socrates or whoever, Plato, but to find somebody that will create that balance for you. Oh my gosh, my wife was my balance. Everything that I sucked at, she excelled at. And
when you have a great wife, don't you?
Yes,
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, Charlie and I both know our limitations. We know what we are not good at. And I think we both know what we are good at. And we just, need to continue to build that union.
Folks, you are listening to one of our such a valuable community member. John, thank you for being part of our community, and we to yours. You're just doing a fabulous job. Any child that has an opportunity to spend time with John and his program, I think it's just going to be a great experience. So thanks so much again, John. We really appreciate you joining us, and hope you'll come back and we'll have some more discussions, because we could talk all day.
Oh, that's for sure, John. I appreciate the opportunity. It has been a blast. Hope to talk to you soon. We will talk soon.
If you would like more information about college swimming consulting, please click the link below to get in touch with Leslie Lucas, who will personalize your recruiting experience for you and help you find the school for you.